Wow. Thank you all for coming here. Such a crowded room. It's very nice that I can share my talk with you today. I want to introduce myself. My name is Paul van der Slot. I'm a freelance hands-on software architect, and I'm very enthusiastic about domain-driven design and collaborative modeling. But those are not the topics I'm going to talk about today. Today I'm going to talk about personal development. And I think that getting good in learning is one of the best skills you can have as a software engineer. Learning is very important. And I noticed this already at my first day as a software engineer. So when I joined the company, I had a talk in the first day with the CTO, and the CTO told me that we have a lot of people like myself with no IT background at that company. And some of them were in a few years one of the best developers that they had. But they also had some developers that within a year quit their job already. And he said that I had the potential, and if I would put in the effort and wanted to learn, that I could be as good as all the other people that were starting at that company. And what he did there is, from the first time, he made it my responsibility. It was my responsibility whether I would succeed or not. And I would be up for a lifetime of learning when I start a career in IT. And he was right. There was a lot to learn. It was overwhelming in the first years, and I had no idea where to start. And when I had a feeling that I was getting to know things, the world of IT is quite a young field, and it's so fastly evolving that there were already so much new things that I had to learn again. And moreover, there are also a lot of new people into IT. So from the Clean Coder blog, you can see that in 30 years, each 5 years, the population of software engineers has doubled, and that there are a lot of software engineers younger than 35 years old. And what this means is that about half the population of software engineers has less than 5 years of experience. And that means that we have to help those people in getting better in learning. And a part of learning is also the mindset. So it would be great to reflect a bit yourself and think, how do you see yourself and other people? Do you think that if someone is not capable of doing something, he or she never will? Or do you believe more in a growth mindset, where people will learn from mistakes, and if they make failures, it's an opportunity to get better? So I'm curious, do you recognize yourself in some of these thoughts? That might mean that you are already on the right track and ready for leveling up. Because this is, I think, the mindset that you need to have when you want to improve continuously. And on the other hand, I think these thoughts will not help you that much. So if you see some of these thoughts that you recognize and that you think yourself as well, maybe you can acknowledge this thought and set it aside for now. And during this talk, try to listen with an open mind and be curious, because if you think like this, probably there's also the most room for improvement at your part. All right. So now I will talk about different models of labeling your level. But what is your level? We have to first think about different levels that there are, and before we can talk about that. But you have to be sure, you have to understand that a model of what level you are is always a representation of reality, not reality itself. So like George Box said, all models are wrong, but some are useful. So you can use a model to describe something and understand something better, but it's never completely the reality. And I'll share some of these models describing how to level up. So the first model is the most well-known. It's junior, media, and senior. But it also has some downsides. So what you see with this model is that it's often related on how much you earn. It's compensation related. It's related on the years of experience, maybe on how much skill somebody has, and the responsibilities. So the responsibilities for a senior engineer are often different than the responsibilities of a junior engineer. But one of the downsides is that it's different in each company. So if you're working on a local company and you're the senior engineer there, yeah, maybe if you start working at Google, you're not a senior engineer at Google, but you might start there as a junior engineer. Another way of looking at things is just like a blacksmith does. So if you want to learn about the craft of blacksmith, Then you find a master who owns a shop, and then you start there as an apprentice. Then you start learning the job there, getting better, and at some point, when you have some basic skills, you will evolve into a journeyman, and you can visit different shops with different masters, learn the craft, share your thoughts from one shop with another shop, at the end maybe becoming a master and owning your shop yourself. And this is quite relatable actually to IT. There are also some of these stages in IT. So if you are an apprentice at first, you probably have an attitude of improving, where you value learning a lot and are mostly inward focused, and you still are responsible for your own learning journey. And then at some point, when you've learned the basics, then you will focus more on the connections between practitioners, go to different masters, and share ideas with others, and at some point have a growing portfolio where you showcase what you have learned already. And what is very important is the line here on the bottom. You retain attributes from previous stages. So while you at some point are a journeyman, you still are also an apprentice by heart. So at times you still have to focus on learning and be inward focused, and then at times you are acting as a journeyman again. And once you've proven yourself in different places, you have becoming a master, where you are creating new tools, training journeymen, or do some superior skill sharing. So this is also an interesting way of looking at the evolution of where you are. The next one I want to talk about, even though there is no real scientific evidence for this curve, is the Dunning-Kruger effect. I still find this model very helpful in my own personal journey. So I try to explain what is happening here. On the y-axis, you have the confidence you have, and on the x-axis, your experience and your knowledge, so your competence, actually. And you will start out with not knowing what is happening without confidence. And then they call it, you start climbing the mountain, which they call Mount Stupid. Because at the end of this road, your confidence is sky high, but you have not that much competence yet. So you think you know everything. And then in a later phase, you're falling into the valley of despair. So you realize that there is way more to this than you thought. Even reaching the bottom at some point, thinking you're never gonna understand things and having an imposter syndrome. Followed by crawling out of the valley and then slowly walking the road of enlightenment, where things are starting to make sense again. And at the end, you reach the plateau of sustainability, where you think, trust me, it is complicated. I've done the walk, I have some experience right now, and I have way more competence, but also some confidence now after all my experience. And this is actually the curve that I will use mostly for this talk to talk you through different behaviors at different phases. Knowing, of course, this is not the only way to look at things. All right, some patterns and principles for learning. So most of the inspiration for my talk is from the Apprenticeship Patterns book. This is a book where you can find most of the patterns and principles that I mentioned, and it's freely available at O'Reilly.com. I will reference a lot of books, by the way, and at the end I will have a slide with all the books on them, so good to know maybe. And I want to say beware, because I do not have all or even most of the answers. And also, not all of the ideas I share here are applicable in all situations. So you have a job to do right now. Don't get distracted by the things that do not resonate with you, but search for insight that will help you on your personal journey. And I truly believe that if you follow most of the advice that I will share today, that you will improve faster than most of the software engineers around you. All right, onto the curve. Climbing the mountain, the beginning of your journey. And now we have to set ourselves up for growth. And I'll share 4 principles in this phase. And the first one is taking control, related to what I said about the CTO earlier. It's not someone else's responsibility, but it's your responsibility to learn fast and learn the right things. Hopefully you are in an environment with a team that will give you some guidance and help you and make all the circumstances right. but it's up to you to use those circumstances for the better. And if the environment isn't right, it's also up to you to seek a better environment. Next one is being enthusiastic. You might not be the most experienced engineer in this phase, but you have to be excited and full of energy. One of the few responsibilities of a junior engineer is to bring fresh perspective, question everything, bring energy, bring excitement, and you will see that the team will follow on this as well. And the next one is bringing value. So it can be hard for your teammates to justify all the time they are spending to bring you up to speed and to learn you new things if you are a junior engineer. But if you make sure you have some basic skills so that you can do the most simple tasks, and at some point maybe volunteer for unglamorous but necessary tasks, you might create some goodwill in your team that you are showing progress and that there is some return on investment for the other team members. So when they are taking their time to help you, you also show them that you are willing to help the team. And finally, I think the most important one is find guidance. So probably a lot is new around you and you don't know which principles or practices or which patterns you should use and how you should do things. So it is best if there's someone easily available in your team who you can ask questions to and who's there as a mentor to you. And it's even better if you try to collaborate with them more often, so work side by side. That will really make the experience better and improve your learning speed. And one of the reasons guidance can make a big difference is because of the zone of proximal development by Lev Vygotsky. Lev mentioned that there are 3 zones. The inner zone is everything you can do by your own. And the outer zone is everything you cannot do, maybe because you don't know about it. And in between is the zone of proximal development, and that is everything you can do with help. And this is actually where the magic happens. This is the sweet spot. This is where you get just out of your comfort zone and with a little bit of help can make huge jumps in your progress. So this is mainly why guidance is so important. All right. Now the phase of continuously growing. So the circumstances are right, and now it's time to grow faster. And one of the important things, especially early in your career, is that it's quite hard to learn things by only hearing them or reading them. You really have to get your hands dirty, and you have to try things. So once you are settled, you should take some time to do deliberate practice, which I will talk about in the next slide, or integrate experimenting in your job. So let me give an example. If you want to practice refactoring and get better in refactoring and recognizing code smells and fixing that, I think you should do that on the job. And maybe when on a normal task it may take you 3 hours to do something, if you integrate those things like refactoring, it might take you 4 or 5 hours. But you shouldn't be too harsh on yourself and just do that. Take the extra time. Nobody knows how much time it should take to finish that task. And moreover, you're investing in yourself, you're investing in the code base, you're investing in your team, and actually you're making a small improvement that will help you in the future to do things better and faster. So I think integrating experimenting on the job is a mindset that is really important. And about deliberate practice, this is more about creating an environment where it's safe to fail. So there are different ways you can do that. This can be done by side projects called breakable toys. But you can also do that with coding katas. So alone or with a group, practice something particularly and take a few hours for that and just go and practice in an environment which is not production or your code for work. And the last one, if you have a technical coach available, is learning hours, which is from the book The Summon Method. And that is where you learn as a team a particular technique, for instance, test-driven development with a coach in your own code base. And both the coding katas and the Summon Method are books as well from Emily Page, who also has a YouTube channel. So if you're more into that or into technical coaching, I really would advise you to look into it. Next up is exposing your ignorance. And I think this is a great quote by Jake Scruggs. And I definitely felt somewhere in my career like this. Tomorrow I need to look stupider and feel better about it. This staying quiet and trying to guess what's going on isn't working so well. So it's very important, if you want to expose your ignorance, that there is a safe environment and that there's psychological safety. So there's also a role in leadership and in management to create this. But if that's available, your instinct still might say not to be vulnerable and not to share your thoughts about what is going on. But remember that honesty will be valued by others and that you should lead by example. Start asking questions about what is going on and what people actually mean. And be extra alert when people start to use buzzwords. So I think there are often more people in the room with questions that don't dare to share their questions. And often people are using buzzwords as well, while they themselves not even are fully understanding what they are saying. So for instance, if they are talking about microservices or Kafka or event-driven architectures or domain-driven design, ask them what they specifically mean, and you will know as a group better what is going on at that time. Next on in this phase, it's also very important to understand that it's quite a long road if you want to be one of the best software engineers in the world. Being a master software development doesn't happen overnight, and it's important that you keep sustainable motivations. Gerald Weinberg said that most of the software engineers, and I think these are the best ones, get joy by programming itself. So they find inner joy and inner motivation of programming. And that's important if it's a long road, because we are sometimes used for that there are quick wins, quick promotions, easy roads, but becoming a master in software engineering isn't an easy road. And you should value learning and growth in this phase specifically over salary or status. And you should try to find joy in programming itself. And now we are talking about motivation. Daniel Pink also writes about this in his book Drive. And he says that carrots and sticks, so rewards and punishments, do not work with creative tasks like software engineering. So if we try to make us software engineers work better or work harder, it doesn't help to give us rewards or punishments. What helps us is autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So freedom to choose our task, when we do it, with whom we do it, the technique we do it. We get value from getting better in things, mastery, and it helps definitely if there's a greater purpose we are contributing to. All right, to finish off this part of climbing the mountain, I have some book tips. And in this phase, it's important to focus on the basics and to get good in your job. And these are some books that will help you get a good mindset and focus on the basics. Now on to the next part. So we've climbed the mountain, we reached the top, and probably we are full of self-esteem. This might even feel like we are the big fish in the small pond. And this is especially true if over the time we've climbed the mountain, we stayed at the same place. So if we stayed at the same team, at the same company, then especially we feel like the person that knows everything that historically happened to the code, why we've done things, and all the ins and outs of how we develop software in that company. And now you have a choice to make, just like in the Matrix. Will you stay in your comfort zone, be the go-to person, repeating your tricks, doing over and over what you have done, and being valuable to that company? Or do you value your learning experience more? And do you want to start looking around, seeing if there's more to life than what you've seen at that one place? Maybe you have to look for another pond where you can be the small fish in the big pond again. And this is related to the pattern being the worst. So if you're the best in your class, probably you aren't learning that much anymore. But if you switch up and become the worst, then you can learn from the best, and you can at that point show that you can grow towards the level of the other experienced engineers. If there's a phase where you outgrow your environment and your rate of learning leveled up, this is something you might consider. And to me personally, I did this by accident. So at some point I was at an assignment that I thought, yeah, let's try something different. And I came somewhere else. And it really blew my mind how much I did not know. So I thought I was quite mature in my software development, and then I noticed so many different practices and what we can do and how people look towards software engineering that I thought, okay, I'm really a rookie. And I find this part of the Apprenticeship Patterns book a striking summary, so I will read it out loud for you. If you hang on long enough, people will start calling you experienced. But that should not be your goal. All experience indicates is that you've been able to survive. And it doesn't indicate the amount you have learned, only the time you have spent. And in certain parts of our industry, it's quite easy to repeat the same year of experience 10 times over without making significant progress. In fact, sometimes it can turn into anti-experience, the phenomenon where every additional year reinforces all the bad habits you have picked up. And this is why your goal should be to become skilled rather than experienced. The increase in skill level is the only meaningful testament to the effort you have spent inspecting, adapting, and improving your working habits. And I found this very striking. It's also very visual to me. I've seen people around where I thought, okay, yeah, you are someone who have done for 10 years the same trick over and over, and you haven't, it hasn't been better for you at some point. All right, on to the next phase, crawling out of the valley of despair. And this is a phase of unlearning old habits and uncovering better ways of working. And I want to start this part with a story. A story about a Zen master and a young philosopher. So a young philosopher hears about a Zen master who is very experienced and very well known in the world. And he wants to learn from that Zen master, so he visits him. And when he sees the Zen master, he immediately asks him, "What can you teach me? What can you teach me?" And the Zen master started talking about some of the meditation techniques that he was used to. And after a few lines already, the young boy was interrupting the Zen master, saying, "Oh, I know that. That's just like I do meditation, but then with pictures." And then the Zen master tells him to stay attuned to the universe and listen to what is happening around him. And he immediately steps in again and says, yeah, that's how I learned to meditate. I also listen to my surroundings. And he rambles on and on and on. Well, the Zen master, when the young boy was finally quiet again, said that he sees humor in everything, also this situation. And the young boy started telling his best jokes to the Zen master. And then when he was finally finished, the Zen master invites him to a tea ceremony, which was quite famous. So the Zen master picked up a big cup to fill with tea, and then he started pouring the tea. And bit by bit, the cup got fuller and fuller, and at some point, the cup went full and was overflowing. And the young boy says, "Stop, stop, you need to stop right now. Can't you see the cup is already full and overflowing?" And the Zen master asked the boy then, "Okay, but if your cup is full, why do you come to me, and how can you expect me to give you something to drink?" And this was kind of a metaphor for the young boy, which head was already full with all the ideas that there was no room for something else. And this is why it's good to have at sometimes a stance of not knowing. So when you're already an experienced engineer who has seen a lot, when somebody tells something in your head, you probably are already connecting the dots and thinking, oh, that relates to that and to that and to that, and you stop listening. But it would be better at sometimes to assume that there's something new to learn, assume that you don't know, and use questions and active listening to search for new insights. So this can be summarized as first seek to understand before you try to be understood. And this is related to a blog post that Matthias Verraas once wrote. He wrote about the "it's just like" heuristic. And he said that when people are saying "it's just like," it's a sign that they don't understand something. Because using "it's just like" gives you the permission not to investigate something deeply. You think, it's just like that, and then you believe that it's the same as the old thing. So for instance, if someone says, "Have you heard about Quarkus?" "Oh yeah, Quarkus, they're just like Spring Boot." It's kind of similar maybe, but when you think about it like that, you immediately stop thinking about the differences and what might be the extras that Quarkus give over Spring Boot, or maybe the downsides of it. So be aware if you think like, it's just like something else. Another pattern is reflecting as you work. So you've already climbed the mountain, you've quite some experience, and you've developed some habits, of course. But you might not be sure if that's the best way to do things. So in this phase, it might be good to start introspecting and looking into why you are working in a certain way, and maybe learning from other people how they are doing things, and if there are better ways to do your work. And if you want some inspiration on this from an objective point of view, you can look into books like Extreme Programming or Agile Technical Practices Distilled. These are great books to help you reflect on your practices in your daily work, and maybe to realize that there are other ways of doing things. All right. Now we are focusing on being open and learning new ideas. And now it might be good again to think about what we can get from learning from others. So in the beginning, it's very important that you get a mentor, and probably you will follow everything the mentor says in the beginning. But now you have, with some more experience and some more luggage, it would be interesting to investigate again what you can learn from other people. And the first one is finding mentors. And I don't mean especially one mentor that will take you by the hand and help you with everything. I mean finding mentors in anybody. So you can find, let's say there's not one person that knows everything. And I believe that there is wisdom in everyone. So maybe there are some people in your team that you can learn from, or maybe you have seen somebody in this conference that you find very inspirational, or you've read a book or heard someone important in the field of IT. Those can be mentors too. And for instance, for me, in every assignment that I have, I see some people in my colleagues that I see as a mentor, which I try to learn from as much as possible. And I still remember very well the first time I went to a talk of Victor Rentea, or when I watched the YouTube videos of Dave Farley, for instance. Those are real mentors to me, because they can explain difficult concepts quite good. But we shouldn't only look at mentors, we should also look towards like-minded people. So Paul Graham here said there's nothing more important or more powerful than a community of talented people working together on related problems. And I think it's very good to get in touch with people who are walking the same path as you are, so you can share thoughts and ideas with them. So maybe you've met someone today that was like-minded in a talk, someone who's sitting next to you maybe, or at a previous job or your current job, you have somebody who's kind of in a similar level, interested in the same things. It could be very valuable to share with them your thoughts on a regular basis and talk with them. And for instance, I always stay in touch with a few people that I've met from previous assignments that I find very inspirational, or that I've met in conferences. And at some point when I have a problem or don't know what to do, I'll share my thoughts with them, and they can help me in what to do next. And if you have a lot of kindred spirits in your team, you can do a game like this. It's like a work game from G.B. Rainsberger. It's what not to like about this code. And it's a game that can help you with design decisions and get like a shared view on what is the ideal design. So briefly, what this game is about is that you go that together with a group of people from your team, you put some code on the screen, which is not written by anyone in the room, and you objectively, with everyone, are going to share with each other what you do not like about the code. And this creates a shared view on what the ideal code should look like. And after a few of these sessions, you will see that looking at pull requests and doing things like that will become much easier because you have a shared understanding on how the ideal code should look like. And the final pattern for learning from others is rubbing elbows. And what I mean by that is sitting next to each other, that your elbows almost touch. And if you develop software mostly alone, you are missing out a lot. There is a lot you can learn from actively working hands-on, side by side with someone else. So patterns like pair programming are very valuable in that sense, but also collaborative modeling methods, where you do not write the code, but you collaboratively design code, are very valuable. There you can really learn from your colleagues. And the final one for this part is expanding your bandwidth. And what I mean by that, that is important that we learn what we don't know, instead of staying in the realm of everything we do know. But that's hard, right? How can I know what I don't know? So I have a tip for this one. It's not completely bulletproof, but what I like to do is I look to opinionated places where they say something about the most important technology or the most important methods or tools in our toolbox for IT. So you can look at the technology radar from ThoughtWorks, which is just out a few weeks ago again, which releases every year. Or you can go to InfoQ, where they have a trends report. And these are great starting points to get some insights in what you could investigate. So you can see everything around there, what is happening in the field of IT, and maybe you see some things that are interesting. All right, books again. So what we've noticed is this phase is more about getting insights, unlearning old ways, and being open for best practices. And I think these are some books that will help you, especially Domain-Driven Design and the book of Dave Farley, Modern Software Engineering, will help you with an opinionated guide of how a good software engineering team would work and how good looks like, actually. All right, the road to enlightenment now. So now you are aware of some of the best practices, and you can do a fairly objective self-assessment. Now it's time to broaden your view and your thinking. And this is a phase where you have to become more comfortable with not knowing things. These are two of the greatest minds in history of the world, and they are saying the more that they know or the more that they learn, the more they realize they actually don't know anything. There is so much to know, and the more you know, the more you realize there's everything that there is to learn. And if you realize this, it is still important to stay motivated. And you can stay motivated by getting better and getting improving. So be motivated by mastery, keep an internal drive, even though you know that you never will know everything. And while the previous phases were quite clear, so you get your hands dirty, you get some experience, then you learn something about best practices, you reflect on your work. But now you come in a phase of your career where you have to find your own path. Now there is no manager anymore or someone around you that can tell you this is what you should do, or this is what you should learn, or this is the conference or the training you should go to. now you should create your own path. What is interesting to you? Where do you want to go? Those are really important questions that you should answer yourself. Maybe at this stage you don't even want to be a software engineer anymore. You're interested in growing towards an architect or maybe a manager. You have to find out what it is for you. And you're also not in school anymore. And in school, they created the curriculum for you. And now you have to find out what it is you want to learn this year. So what books, trainings, or conference do you want to attend? And is it in line with what you want to achieve? And are you at the right place, at the right job at this moment for what you want to achieve? So you have to create now your own curriculum. And talking about also reading books, I want to share something about the value of books. What I love about books is that there is so much knowledge available in the world. There are some of the great minds who feel like mentors to me that have shared their thoughts and have taken a lot of effort into writing all their knowledge on a few pages of paper. It's like a memo from a mentor. And what Steve McConnell says is, if you read regularly, you soon have a firm grasp of the industry and you'll distinguish yourself from everyone around you. And the amount he suggests to read is quite a lot. Maybe start with 2 or 3 books a year, or even 1. But I think it's very valuable. So about a reading list. So when you've dived into books a bit, you realize that there is so much information available to you. And probably your reading list will grow faster than you can read. And this is the moment that is important, that you create a habit of reading. So maybe you want to read a little bit before work, or sometimes at a vacation, or in the weekends, or just before your children have gone to bed. And it's important to keep up with a reading list. And this is one of the greatest apps for this that I know. So if you don't know it, go and download it from the Play Store or the App Store. Goodreads is an app that keeps track of book reviews. And there you can keep track of your reading list and everything you have read. And also you can rate books and keep track of the ratings you have given, but also other people have given. So before I read a book, I always go to Goodreads and browse through some of the reviews and what people are thinking about a book. And finally, we are now at a place where we need to share what we learn. So at this point, you've become a developer with quite some experience, and people look up to you as a source of knowledge. But if you want to grow further, you have to share that knowledge and be able to communicate effectively and bring other people up to speed. So it is very good if you start sharing knowledge. And this can be as simple as doing pair programming and sharing something with your teammate, and maybe sharing something at a stand-up with your team. But maybe later on you can start blogging, or maybe you want to present something in a lunch meetup at your company or at a conference like this. I think that will benefit you very much. All right. And this is about the moment where we realize how complicated everything around us is. And it is, in our clean, nice box, it all looks like we write code matching with the requirements, and then we're done. And then people start asking, but what we are doing here, does it create value for our customers? And you think, I'm just writing whatever the product owner has told me, and that's what I'm doing right now. So you probably are more interested in zooming out in everything and looking holistically to the system. And this is where systems thinking might be helpful. So systems thinking is talking about linear thinking and moving from linear thinking to non-linear thinking. So linear thinking is the most thinking that everyone does. So that's basically we go from A to B to C. It can be broken into steps. It's just like a computer program, clear cause and effect. But non-linear thinking is different. and way more complex. And most of the things in our world are nonlinear. So there's no clear cause and effect in nonlinear thinking, and there are a lot of different forces, and usually things that we do not expect. And we can get easily surprised by the system with nonlinear thinking. So for instance, how a group of people behaves, or how something like the elections in the US went. That's something that is very complex and nonlinear with a lot of forces at play. And if we apply this nonlinear thinking and zooming out to software development, we might get some insights. And I want to share at the end some insights that I've gotten from zooming out of just doing the work of software development. And the first part is that context is all. Some of the senior engineers always say, it depends. And yeah, I always get a little bit annoyed when someone says that. But there's some truth in it, because the answer of the question is always dependent on the context. Not everything works in every context. And this is where decision-making processes, and decision documentation become very important. And if you want to know more about that, there's a great talk on YouTube from Sonja Nantason about architectural decisions, which I highly suggest. There's a book coming out from Andrew Harmon Law about facilitating software architecture. And I'm not sure if you heard about architecture decision records, which are kind of a documentation of software decisions. I think it's very valuable to write down what was this decision, what is the problem we intend to solve, and why did we choose for something, to help ourselves and other people to understand why we decide something. Because the context is key, and in 4 years the context might be totally different. Another thing we notice when we zoom out is that we notice that it isn't only technical things we're solving, it's socio-technical. So we have to look for an optimization of the social parts and the technical parts. And Gerald Weinberg said that no matter what the problem is, it's always a people problem. That's the hard part. Like writing the computer program, that's something we all can do. But then the interaction with other people and creating it for a customer and everything around it, that's getting harder. So you have to think about the culture you're working on. That's something that's socio-technical. And how are we organized delivering things? How do teams work together? Conway's Law, people with hidden agendas and power dynamics and social structures. Those are all things that influence our result in delivering software as a team, and things we usually do not think about. The next one is about what we are responsible for as a team. So here we see in the yellow parts everything we do as a team. So in the top, we came from waterfall, where we only did building, and then we started building and testing together. Then the DevOps movement came, and we also did the deployments, releases, and monitoring ourselves. And even later, you might also think about opportunity selection and requirements planning. So deciding what we are working on, is that something that should be inside the boundary of a team or not? And why I say that is that it's very important to see the value of understanding what you are solving, understanding the problem domain. And Gergely Orosz also talks about this, and he says in his blog post that Silicon Valley-like companies, so the companies that do it right in this way, think that engineers are value creators and creative problem solvers. That's what engineers are by heart. But traditional companies still see them as factory workers, where you just give some requirements and they build something. So yeah, that's still a pitfall. And Dan North also described this in a thought experiment, which I'm going to do with you all. So he says that learning is the constraint. And if you think about one of the bigger projects that you have done, maybe something that took you a year or a year and a half, and what if at the end of that year or year and a half, you would throw away all of the code and then with that team, build it again? How much time would it take? And a lot of people say that it would take a half or 1/3 of the time, because learning is actually the constraint. Understanding what they are building for the customer, getting feedback from what they put live, that's what really helped them. And also, Alberto Brandolini says, software development is a learning process. Working code is just a side effect. And I think it's very important that developers understand why they are building things, because they are the people who put things in production and have to make daily decisions about what they are building. If only the CTO or some manager or domain expert knows why we are building things, that's not the best thing you can have. It's best that we all understand what we are building and that we can be creative around problem solving. So, again, some book tips around broadening your view and your thinking and exploring your blind spots. These are some great books. And we're almost at the end. So we're reaching the plateau of sustainability. And according to this curve, it looks kind of an end state. But it doesn't mean that you have reached mastery at this point. Probably you're only more aware of your limitations. So I believe that in software development, there are no true masters. And I only know for sure that being rich or lucky or famous or standing on the stage like this doesn't make you a master. I am not a master. At best, someone sharing about the road ahead. And at some moment in my career, I maybe thought that I was an 8 out of 10 in my abilities, only realizing a few months later that the skill goes to 100 instead of 10. And the last principle I want to share is be humble and kind. If you're an appreciated, experienced developer, you have some power in this industry, and people look up to you and value your opinion. And you should not be too harsh on other people, still walking the same road, and be kind and patient with them. And realizing that they also might have things to say that you still do not know. So stay humble and curious. There's still something to learn. And finally, I want to do a quick experiment with you, because next steps are often quite hard. So I want to take a moment to do a 50% solution with you. So maybe you can take some time now for yourself. And I mean 15% solution because it's not a 100% solution. It's the first step that you maybe can take in the next week. So what would be a small action that you can take next week to get some momentum in your personal growth? Maybe you can reflect on that. And if you have some ideas, as we walk out and when we're finished, maybe you can share it with your neighbor and enlighten each other with some of the things you are thinking about, and maybe you can inspire each other. All right, here's the slides with all the books for the people who want to take a picture. And yeah, after that, I want to say thank you all for listening and for your attention. And I hope it was very helpful. And if you have some questions, find me or here downstairs or in the hallway, or send me a message or LinkedIn. I'm glad to talk. And you can also scan the QR code if you want the slides. Thanks.